All right. So we have Mason Clark keeping a six-man hand. Already has played Dried Arbor, is on the play against the 7-card hand from Hayne. Yeah, boy, it's been a while since I've seen a lantern control hand, and it definitely still looks as weird as usual. Surgical extraction, pipping heal, and codex shredder. Oh yeah. I think we're in for something quite unusual.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting matchup because this is the sort of deck the Lantern should be good against, right? Like Yawgmoth only has like the only cards that matter are Yawgmoth and Grist. The rest of the deck doesn't do very much. So theoretically, Lantern should be well positioned against this, but also like Lantern's lost so many tools from the last time it was strong. I don't know if just the base strength of the deck is there to beat something like Yawgmoth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm so out of the loop with Lantern. What did they even lose? Did they lose Mox Opal, I suppose? Did they even
Yeah,
play that?
Mox Opal was the big one.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, I don't think I've seen a Lantern control deck since Saga's been printed, and that seems to be a huge ad, so who knows?
Very true, very true. All right, we see fast development by Mason. Triple 1-drop start, Dried Arbor untouched as a land here on turn 1, which is usually a pretty risky line, but against with open deck list here against. Although actually, they did not know what the opponent was on.
Well,
Um,
Kane's other deck is Boros Energy, right? So that is the Giganta
oh,
companion. So that's the downside
gotcha.
of playing a companion event like this, I suppose.
Yeah. That's what I thought when we played against each other as well. That you could not know what I was on when making the
Oh,
Williams.
actually, Haynes deck doesn't have Giganta as a companion. So Mason was just really brave taking a risk out here.
Okay, and we do see an interesting line here. I got a soul culture being surgical. I suppose the reasoning there might be that the cauldron is a bit of a tricky card that can be can sort of mess around in snaring bridge and whatnot. And just getting rid of that completely.
Yeah, Cauldron's also like one of I think the few ways that that Yawgmoth can win. Like, say you're able to get rid of all the Yawgmoth at some point, that's kind of just down to Grist and Cauldron as the win conditions. So it makes some sense to like kind of try and snipe that. Just reduce Mason to 0 win conditions in deck. I think is how Anna wins this.
Absolutely. And so, just to refresh, maybe perhaps some viewers who've joined Modern in recent years, um, what does this lantern? How does this lantern deck win? What is its game plan? What's going on here, Arya?
So the way Lantern Control works is it's reliant on this one card, Lantern of Insight, which I'm sure we'll see in play at some point. And what that does is it makes both players have to play with the top card of their deck revealed. So the deck plays out Lantern Control, or gets into play with Urza's Saga, and then leans on these effects like Codex Shredder you see in play. There's cards like Pixis of Pandemonium in some lists that like kind of do the same thing. A lot of cards that let you selectively mill the top card of your opponent's library. So you want to assemble that Lantern plus Codex Shredder combo, and that way you can try and make sure your opponent never draws a relevant card, because whenever they would draw a card that's relevant, you can just mill it with Shredder. So you can make sure they have dead draws turn and turn again, and then you somehow or the other lock them out of the game. The most common way of doing that is Ensnaring Bridge, which we see in Hayne's hand, where Ensnaring Bridge prevents your opponent's creatures from being able to attack if you have no cards in hand. So you set up this lock where you have an Ensnaring Bridge in play, 0 cards in hand, so that your opponent can't attack with anything. And then if they're ever going to have a relevant draw off of what you can see off Lantern, you just try and mill that card off of Codex Shredder to ensure they keep drawing cards that don't matter while you have an Ensnaring Bridge in play.
Yeah, it is. It does sound a little complicated, but if you break it down, it does seem. Yeah, it's a very unusual way of winning at Magic the Gathering, and Lantern Control will sort of be in that Hall of Fame of weirdness, probably until the end of the game, or hopefully it never ends. Of course. Grist hits the battlefield, another Undying Wolf. We're hitting in there with Undying Wolf for 1 damage, putting Hayne to 16. Oh, making 2 insects. Look at that. But Yawgmoth has been named with that Piffy Needle already, so that is not really an option. Um, and Hayne is just one land away, and of course having to empty his hand actually is kind of tricky here, perhaps. Because all these 1/1 creatures, yeah, the text on its language will make it a little tricky there.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be that surprised if we saw Hayne Thoughtseize himself a turn or two down the line to
Hmm.
make sure that he can get empty-handed and not die to the creatures on board.
Yep. That's a neat play that does come up. Who would you like to play against out of these two opponents? So Mason is on. What is Mason like? Haynes' second deck is Boros Energy. What is Mason's second deck again now?
Mason's second deck is Goryo's. And
Darius.
I think I'd much rather play against Hayne than Mason than I would Hayne, because my list is I'm playing blue black frog as my second deck, and my list is very not prepared for Boros, since I knew that neither you nor Mason could bring it this week, and I was just kind of hoping to dodge it. And so it's a tough matchup to start with. My list is very not prepared for it, so I think I'd be in a lot of trouble if that's what I'm up against.
All right. So we have Piffy Needle naming Grist. Logically, that ultimatum could be troublesome, of course, because it goes around Aaron Bridge. Fonzie is actually targeting Mason here. So if Hayne keeps drawing expensive cards like another bridge, the actual effect of bridge won't be coming to effect against all these
Yeah,
1/1s.
in fact, I believe if Hayne doesn't draw something that somehow gets him out of this, he's just dead next turn, right? Mason gets to play Bowmasters, get him to 7, and then has 8 power and 1/1 attackers.
Yeah. So was Hayne just supposed to Fonzie's here on Assassin's Trophy?
Yeah, I
Probably.
think he was maybe forced to try and play out in Snaring Bridge and hope to get lucky off the next draw. Yeah, I don't.
Right, yeah. He would have had to hit a land as well. I guess his Ancient Stirrings could find an untapped land and then play the bridge. Yeah. Maybe Alex is gonna beat himself up a little bit about not forcing that Assassin's Trophy.
I think maybe he didn't think about Bowmasters exactly as a possibility, as a way of like putting a bunch of damage into play.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Yawgmoth's whole like creature beatdown strategy is generally seen as pretty weak. Like of all the combo decks in modern and other formats in general, Yawgmoth is seen as having like one of the weaker B plans. I think like the backup plan of just attacking with 1/1s and 1/2s is a lot weaker than like attacking with other saga constructs or whatever that other combo decks do in their fail state. But in this specific matchup against Ensnaring Bridge as a card specifically, the backup plan of attacking with a bunch of little 1/1s is actually really, really strong.
Yeah, that was that was yeah, an interesting game of Magic, I suppose. All right, now we're going to sideboarding. MTGO Massacre is in Haynes' sideboard. I suppose that would be quite good against what just happened to him. But we'll see. Oh no, I'm sorry. That is not Haynes' sideboard. We have two black green decks next to each other. It's a little
Yeah.
confusing. That's actually Mason's sideboard. Interesting. MTGO Massacre. That is surprising to me to see that in Yawgmoth, but he probably has his good reasons. Um, what are we seeing coming in here?
I mean, for Mason, I think it's mostly about having artifact and enchantment interaction. So we saw Rex Sage come in. I think he's bringing in endurance. That's pretty useful because the way Lantern technically wins is by decking you. So maybe there's some world in which Lantern's unable to kill you if you draw an endurance or two. It's also
Mm.
just like better than some of the really dead cards, like 1-for-1 interaction. But yeah,
What do you think? Hmm?
it's just all about that interaction with problematic permanents. So that's why we see duress coming in as well as something that hits the relevant cards.
What do you think about the One Ring here?
The One Ring's interesting. I don't think Hayne has any Pixis of Pandemonium. I think so. The One Ring depends a lot on whether lanterns or depends at least a little bit on whether the effects lantern is leaning on target, which I think
Hayne
they
does
all
have
do.
2 pixels, which says each, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a limited utility there. It really depends on the texture of the game. And like in theory, Lantern does like just drawing a bunch of cards could be pretty bad for Lantern because you can just draw through the top of your deck being locked by drawing like 3 or 4 times cards at a time with Ring. But I think in practice, a lot of the time, what Lantern does with the surgical spurs board particularly is just lock you out of being able to win the game at all. So in that case, if you like don't have Yawgmoths, don't have Cauldrons, don't have Grists, then One Ring is just a dead clunky draw, and you'd rather be able to apply pressure more quickly before Lantern gets the whole lock set up.
Absolutely. All right, we have a keep 7 on both sides, Lantern of the Inside, from Hayne, a 2-lander, Ensnaring Bridge, and Ancient Stirrings to find Codex Shredder, for example, to start setting up a lock with the Lantern, controlling those draw steps, and yeah, pretty good hand from both players. Halfling turn 1 into Grist, or even a Rex Sage looks pretty good for Mason. Oh.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good example of the way Lantern Control leverages Lantern specifically. So, what this what a spot like this means is once you have information of it on the top of Mason's library, a lot of your cards just get a lot stronger. So we're going to see Pithing Needle naming Grist here, whereas in the blind, Hayne would probably have named Yawgmoth, but this is certainly shutting off 2 cards from Mason. And then we have Codex Shredder, and Hayne's going to be able to make sure that Mason doesn't draw more relevant cards still, or at least would in theory be able to do that, if not for the fact that Mason has interaction for this Pithing Needle.
Yeah, the Reclamation Sage will probably hit that Pithing Needle at some point. You're absolutely right. Lantern's Insight is in play. There's more and more information being gathered and used to Haynes' advantage. The Wall of Roots hitting the battlefield, using its ability to produce another mana and play Agatha's Soul Cauldron, adding up the mana. Ready, I suppose, to also have the option to play Yawgmoth next turn. Wall of Calling on Mason's library. We'll see what Hayne does about that one. Might be able to Codex Shredder it away. I suppose Haywire Might is on Hayne's mind probably. So I might
Yeah.
want to get rid of that card.
Hayden doesn't know about the Rex Sage either, so there's some chance Mason could God for that. There's lots of different ways God can make things go wrong. Yeah, one change we've seen a bunch in Yogg decks over the last several months has been this increase in selection provided by Malevolent Rumble, kind of similar to what the Nadu decks are doing. And I think that card specifically makes this matchup a lot harder because the more abilities Yogg has to dig below just the top card of their library, the weaker the whole Lantern control plan gets. And so something like Malevolent Rumble, just a hard card for uh, a hard card for Hayne to beat and makes this whole like controlling the top of Mason's library a little more difficult than it would have been, I think, with previous iterations of Yogg.
Yeah, absolutely. Malevolent Rumble being cast, Mason taking another counter away from the Wall of Roots. Yeah, the Rumble is just a very silent, innocent, innocuous card from MH3 that really has made an impact in a lot of very strong archetypes.
Yeah, the combination with shifting woodlands, which we see on top of Mason's library, has been particularly potent because what you do, Rumble is really good at letting decks that don't normally fill up their graveyards get Delirium, and that means that it lets a lot of decks that wouldn't previously have access to get this resiliency from woodlands that like makes his creature combo decks fold a lot less to interactive decks.
And oh my god, we have milled a Yawgmoth with the Rumble, just picture perfect. I assume that was what Mason was looking for. And now Yawgmoth enabled on the battlefield here. We have a halfling with some very strong abilities. Interestingly enough, Mason doesn't choose to draw any cards quite yet.
I'm kind of surprised by the choice to not try and like go off here, but I suppose it's pretty difficult for Mason to actually kill in this spot, so might as well wait until there's some more resources in play. Uh, yeah, I think to actually kill Mason would need like enough mana to play a second Young Wolf plus a Blood Artist, so that's probably why I waited. Though, I mean, something like removal for the Soul Cauldron really punishes this.
Yeah. I think I also would have liked to at least maybe make a land drop in that scenario. Stack the wolf a couple times. I guess you can only sack it once.
Yeah. To draw, I think multiple cards, Mason would have to start giving up resources in terms of stuff on his board, and I can see wanting to hold off on that for now.
Yeah. Wait. Alex does not need time on getting rid of that cauldron. Probably pretty happy about that haywire I might draw. But yeah, with the Lantern of Insight, Alex can manipulate his own library as well, right? If he's thinking what's a hate piece that he really needs, he can just start milling his own deck.
Mhm. It's hard to see Hayne coming back from this one, given what we know is in Mason's hand. And has one Pithing Needle, but there's a Rex Age and multiple Grists and Yawgmoths and a Besiju. So Mason has at this point multiple pieces of interaction for any block piece Hayne could have. So not really sure what winning this game looks like for Hayne anymore.
I mean, Hayne does have the garden, which he can copy one of the hate pieces with, right? And he does have an Urza's Arya coming to chapter 3.
Yeah.
Perhaps chance. But yeah, I agree. It's not looking great.
Yeah, unfortunately, Gardens can't copy Pithing Needle, or it could, but it wouldn't do anything because there was no card named with it.
Oh, right.
So
Good point.
that I think complicates matters a little for Hayne. Yeah, I think we might see Mason try and kill next turn, where all he needs is a card. I don't know. Different Yawgmoth decks like to actually win the game a little bit differently. So yeah, he has Zulapod Cutthroat in his deck, but he could conceivably win next turn by going land Yawgmoth Young Wolf. No, he's one mana off of winning next turn. My apologies. With land Yawgmoth Young Wolf, try and like draw to his deck to find a card for the Zulapod Cutthroat. Yeah, he can draw a lot of cards if he wants to. And really, I think the world's kind of his oyster here. There's not much Hayne can do about it.
I was kind of low key rooting for Hayne and his really off the beaten path deck. I mean, Yawgmoth has been one of the strongest decks in Modern, at least before Modern Horizons 3 arrived. So.
Yeah,
Lantern.
it's
Yeah.
hard not to root for like a cool rogue deck like this. It's really bold move bringing it on Hayne's spot. And I mean, who doesn't want to see Lantern Control win, right?
Yeah. I actually was considering playing Yawgmoth myself in this finals, together with Jessica Control. But upon talking to Stefan Schütz, who just made second in the recent Hawks finals, yeah, he kind of talked me out of it. Just saying it's a little too weak, a little too underpowered. And, yeah, so in the end, I went with the boring choices, the obvious ones,
Mhm.
Eldrazi and Proptide.
I actually considered playing Stefan's Mardu list or something really close to it for this week as well. But yeah, the problem is with the restrictions on what you can play, Mardu Energy having 3 colors of lands and 3 colors of spells just locked off too many other decks. I couldn't play it and also play the Murktide deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think this interaction works, but maybe I'm wrong.
We'll find out. In any case, Mason is gonna draw as much cards as life Total is there to draw cards in this very moment. So yeah, as you said, if there would be another land drop to be made or another creature in play, there could be a card for 2 to find that Zulaport Cutthroat, lethal the opponent, sacrificing a bunch of creatures and draining the opponent out, but yeah, not possible in this case. All right, we have a Pithing Needle, and it looks like it's naming nothing.
Yep.
So you were dead on.
Unfortunate interaction here for sure. And yeah, it's hard to imagine what Hayne could even draw here that would get him out of this. Maybe there's like a board wipe in his deck somewhere. But yeah, ultimately like this whole lantern control deck is kind of built around the assumption that your opponent wins the game by attacking you, and Yawgmoth wins the game other ways a lot of the time. So you kind of have to lock out all their combo pieces and lock out their combat step. And I think those two are generally a little more than what this deck can do.
Yeah, and then there's also green as a color, which is very good at blowing up artifacts. So it's just an absolute nightmare, probably. Reclamation Stage hitting the board. I'm curious what Mason is going to do here.
I think it probably goes after the ensnaring bridge, just to like let Mason start getting somewhere towards winning. Mason has like a lot of cards, but he doesn't have infinite cards. He has 9 more draws, and with Codex Shredder plus Lantern of Insight, it's pretty unlikely that he can find what he needs with those draws to actually win the game. So at that point, might as well get in some damage and tax the one resource this Lantern control deck has going.
That's a good point. Definitely an interesting spot. Could have drawn more cards, but yeah. A bubble, a redraw, Lantern of Insight on top. Hayne using the Shredder to dig towards something that does something. But yeah.
It's hard to imagine what that even is at this point. Mason still has this like kind of lock on Hayne where he gets a bunch of looks next turn at the top of his deck to try and find something that wins the game. He can shuffle with a fetch because he has this information thanks to Lantern. He can draw in response to a Codex Shredder activation. There isn't even a Codex Shredder to activate, so I guess that part doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Oh, there's a second Versager. Nice one.
Oh, I guess he can also just kill Hayne. Since there's no Ensnaring Bridge in play, he can just proliferate with Yawgmoth, and this is way over lethal damage.
Fetching a second black source, 4th black source indicates exactly that move, as you've just said.
The Zulaport Cutthroat on top of the deck as well is almost a little rich. Mason has an embarrassment of ways to kill Hayne here.
Oh, poor Lantern. All right, well, you got your wish, as it looks like, Arya. No Boros Energy in the finals, and instead we have Aspergarios versus your Frogtide list. How are you feeling about that?
I'm feeling pretty decent. I haven't gotten to play that much with Frogtide. I am kind of just relying on like general Magic experience and having watched some amount of other people play the deck to get